Have you ever felt the same? Followed every step of a tutorial, expecting perfect result only to end up here. It's not your fault. I wasn't the only one misled. This tutorial seems logical, but they left out something critical. I made 3 mistakes and finally fixed those by different consideration and experiment. So today I'm going to prove what's wrong with them and share what I learned. By the end of this video, you will have a much clearer understanding of how it actually works in a faster way. Looking back at these things I imitated from the videos.
So once we're all glued up here, I sanded this down nice and flat, you can see. And so it peels off a little bit easier in my experience. I do. And so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm only gonna do one side so that I can stand it up and kind of show you guys. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bevel. The next thing I'm gonna do is
Here are 3 mistakes I should have avoided. My number 1 mistake, creating a straight cut, then gluing. As you can guess, I wanted a clean, straight edge as my goal. So my first step was obvious, cut it straight. Then my second thought was to glue them. Everything seemed logical and I moved forward following the tutorial. But then I realized I didn't have the skill to align them perfectly, and once the glue was applied, there was no way back. I told myself, the leather is expensive, I don't want to waste it, so I needed to find a way to fix it. But what I did next only made things worse. My second mistake, sanding the edge. At this point, I knew sanding was the only option. Like those tutorials made me believe, they encouraged me saying,
okay, so as you can see, I sanded a lot.
Light strokes at first, then a little more. I ran my fingers over it, checking it and wondering, is it smooth enough? Had the gap disappeared? Should I sand more? To be honest, I couldn't tell if I was improving it or ruining it. Sanding, checking, everything felt like guessing work. But since I didn't know when to stop, I kept sanding until the edge flipped over. That's when it hit me.
I do.
This is exactly why those guys used the beveler. At this moment, I knew I was fucked. But I couldn't stop here. My leather was telling me I don't want to be thrown away. I had already come too far, wasted too much time, I had to keep going. So I followed the tutorial. I hope it would fix it. So here comes my number 3 mistake, beveling the edge. At this step, I was hoping and praying, but deep down, I already knew this wasn't the solution. But in this situation, you know what I did next, right? I told myself internally, this is the final step, the painting is my only hope. I let it dry, sanded it, painted it again, back and forth, several rounds. I either accept the result with a gap or make a coating thicker to hide the flaw. This compromise made me fucking crazy. I remembered every step I made from the very beginning, wondering, what's wrong with my procedure? Why I cannot get the result I desired? So finally, I realized that result because I cut it straight edge first, then glued them together. It seemed like I could make it perfect. I thought I was keeping it precise, but in reality, I was the idiot who created the gap. And the misalignment, it only got worse from there. To fix the unevenness, I started sanding, like the tutorial said.
I would sand, coat, sand, coat, and then my last coat would have to be like perfect.
But when I sanded, I wasn't smoothing the edge or closing the gap. I was flipping the edge over. At this point, I had to bevel it from flat edge to round. But a round edge, it cannot hold the paint evenly. Everything I did was just covering the mistakes with another mistake. So, what's the right way? How do you get a perfect straight professional edge? Well, this book that changed my thinking, it showed me a diagram that just made sense. Perception of reality as complex, this is the obstacle. Conflicts can be removed just because you believe in inherent simplicity. Yeah, it makes sense. I realized I was wrongly believing that perception of reality as complex equal to a complicated solution. What I should have believed was Newton's core belief, perception of reality as simple. Yeah, it makes sense. Yes. Reality isn't complex, we just make it that way. When I finally understood that, I tried something easier. This time, I started with the same leather, but instead of cutting first, I glued them together first. Then I gave it a final straight cut. This one change eliminated the misalignment problem. No more sanding, no more beveling, just keeping it like this. Then I painted the edge. Let it dry. No sanding, no gassing. Just keep applying thin layers and let it build up naturally. After it fully dried, I sanded it once, but only to flatten it, not to fix anything, just to close the gap. Then I repeated the process, 2 more layers of paint, 1 final sanding, and boom, that was it. But now, you could add 1 final thinner layer for a polished finish. But what I really want to tell you is this: sanding and beveling, they were never the solution. They were just unnecessary steps that wasted time and ruined my work. What's next? More fixes and better techniques? In my next video, I'll show you even more tools and advanced method of edge painting, why I'm using CMC, how to thin the paint correctly, why I switched to a roller instead of an awl for painting. There are so much more to cover. See you there.